needs. Number 4 is really probably the most resounding message. There has been research validating that the model works on the population with which I'm going to use it with. Therein lies part of the dilemma of some of the models that we have out today, is they were never validated on this population that we're talking about here today. How do you help offenders? They were validated on who? Norms, normal, ordinary, responsible people, which is good, but in the textbooks now, when you look at some of the textbooks on the techniques, what they say is, do not use with offenders. They actually get that specific. Because what the research has borne out is some of the approaches that heretofore we thought we could transfer over are non-transferable to this small subset. The staff is trained in the approach, ensuring that it's delivered with some integrity, fidelity, and we have structured follow-ups. So here's, I threw this in because punishment approaches, Andrew's one on the same, based on over 440 studies, not a single review of the control study of the effects on recidivism. A variation in official punishment was able to find studies reporting large or consistent reductions in recidivism through sanctions alone. One of the inherent issues that's always of interest to me as a researcher is, the research is pretty clear. You cannot punish a personality disordered person out of their behavior. In fact, what it does is make them more resistant to change. It actually makes them worse. The more you punish them, the worse they get. It's really interesting. So in one sense, we're kind of creating our own worst nightmare by trying to punish these people when, in point of fact, what the research is pretty clear on is you've got to get them engaged in a change process as best we can. Now, can we help everyone? No. Have I met offenders we cannot help? Yes. However, surprisingly enough to me, we let some people out I would never ever vote to let out in society again. We don't know how to help them. So there's some interesting caveats through some of this research. Here's the NIC's Thinking for Change, no difference between treatment and controls. That was the only study that's been published in the literature to my knowledge. Georgia looked at reasoning and rehabilitation, found that the treatment effect collapsed at 3-year points. So in one sense, what this signals to us is we got to track our data long enough. Heretofore, what we've talked about is 1-year data after treatment. That's typically what grants require. That's typically what funders require. So let's see how the program does 1 year after. What we've learned is, kind of like any other illness treatment model, if you will, is it's the longitudinal effects. How long does treatment suppress or sustain the change process? MRT twice as effective as R&R. This was done by Wilson and McKenzie. Findings where MRT is 2 times more effective. So what that signals is maybe not all programs are equal, if you will. Do some work? Yes. Do some work better than others? I think the research is resounding on that coming about. There's the 10-year study. That's why MRT is probably one of the more widely used models in the country. And this is probably what changed the use of MRT was the Washington State's Public Policy Institute. When they looked at every program they were delivering in their own system, what was the most cost-effective model that one could use to reduce recidivism? And it was MRT. Now, this is, some of you I understand have heard from Steve Aos, some of the research he's done. I mean, they've really put together some interesting stuff. This is, once again, meta-analysis showing the importance of evidence-based criminal justice interventions. Adult programs that combine supervision and treatment have a net gain of $11,500. So when you talk about using evidence-based practices on continuum of care, on reentry models, is there a cost benefit? Absolutely. Absolutely. There is certainly a cost benefit. Is it worth investing in? Absolutely, you're going to get your money back pretty darn quickly, because the one thing about our offenders is they can certainly cause a lot of havoc, create a lot of new victims, and it's very expensive to house them and do nothing with them. Josephine County, this was just sent to me. I threw it in. This is another county here that's doing something. I thought it was interesting. It was use of cognitive models. And this is the book that's coming around, Overall Those Who Received MRT. There's a chapter actually on cognitive behavioral and what works, and this is kind of quoted from that on does it reduce recidivism. And I guess the challenge for us is back to this. So when you start talking about building programmatics that are going to give you the best bang for your buck, these are the categories or the quadrants that you need to fill with models that are developed to work with offender populations. And frankly, you're to be commended. I know for a fact that you're doing some of these now. You all do things. I mean, that's why I'm excited to always come out this way, is certainly more progressive out here than some of our southern states who are very tied to the punishment myth issue of if we just lock them up and keep them there, they'll do better. In fact, in one state we worked in, finally a researcher got a hold of some juvenile data. And lo and behold, they did a 10-year snapshot of the kids who had been in their juvenile detention facilities, assigned to those, what happened to them 10 years later. And in the state, what they discovered was 94% graduated to adult corrections. 94%. They were stunned. They were staggered. Actually, the federal courts stepped in after that was presented and took over that system. But what it points out is data. When you talk about how do we know if what we're doing is making a difference, it's research, it's data, it's tracking what the heck we do. And therefore it allows us to improve our outcomes. I think that's the other message is oftentimes we don't track what we're doing. We don't really look at it over the long term. And what we've learned from our research is it's not that one-year data you need to be looking at. It's really at the 3-year point, somewhere between 3 and 5, we can start talking about permanent change, because that's when recidivism levels off, that's when rearrest rates level off, and the treatment and control groups start moving at a 1% differential, which is fairly insignificant compared to what we've had at that 45-degree angle going up. And so when we start talking about the magnitude of effect, and can we potentiate those effects by using several components that fill in motivation, insight, and skills, the answer is yes. And as some groups are beginning to look at it, it's how we order the models. We have models out there that address these quadrants, but in what order do we place them? How do they work together? How can we maximize that potential change process? And can we reach more people by using those models? And I think it's, you know, the good news is, from our standpoint, there's a resounding message. People can change, and we can actually reach a good portion of the offender populations, if we will. The sad news is when we don't, we actually kind of reap what we sow, if you will, is they do come back. And they come back, and oftentimes they've created a whole host of new victims and havoc in our communities. And I think in a lot of places, people forget that we send people off, and when you look at the research, where do they come back to? From whence they were sent off. They come back to their home situation, and therein lies part of the dilemma. I was just in a state where they had a rule that they're trying to get changed, that the county that sent them to the state actually had to accept them back, even though it may not be the county which they lived in. And of course that's creating all kinds of havoc because they have no support systems. I mean, some of these people are ending up in prison doing their time, and then they get out, and what do they have? They're standing there in a county where, what do you know about this county? I was just arrested here. I know nothing. It was late at night. I was driving through. Decided to rob the store. So there's some interesting caveats that we sometimes do to ourselves to undo kind of the things that we try to do to help people by not thinking through the ramifications oftentimes of, you know, what do these rules do to people's lives in the long term? Thank you.
Doctor, thank you very much. We're going to take questions now, but before we do, if you can provide our staff with the PowerPoint presentation, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah.
Senator Cruz?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairs. Doctor, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I mean, you're ordering up there. I would put insight as A, and just let me kind of take this through. I have not been part of the criminal justice system from the inside, but I am a person in recovery. Went into treatment in March 16th of 1986, so wow. That's how long it's been. But the thoughts the process is pretty much the same for